Well, a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first round of the AROC Racing Leagues Giro D'Italia for 2026. This is, of course, our 4C and GTV championship. The first bit of action to kick off a new season, a new era here in the AROC Racing Leagues, and we do have plenty of change afoot, plenty to talk about before we head into things this evening. So a big hello to all of you for tuning in this evening. A big hello to all of you who might be watching on after the fact, just to catch up on some of the racing action. But I'll just do a quick couple more tech checks to make sure we're good to go for this new season before we get into things. So while I do that, enjoy some of the sights here at Mugello, and more on that in just a moment. Fantastic, folks. We're all live. We're all good to go. That's what we like to see. 15 minutes to go in this qualifying session as well. As I say, qualifying here for round one at Mugello. We're on board with Andrew Whitehead at the moment, who's demonstrating rather well one of our Alfa Romeo 4C GT3 race cars. A true machine is this one. It's the Harpy mod, this 4C, so very high quality piece of kit. 50 minutes to go in this one, as I say, and Whitehead leads us with a 1:49.469. That's not the only car in this championship, though. We've gone back to some days of old, really, and here we can see Matt Daly in P2 at the moment. Sorry, no, it's not Matt Daly. I've already fallen foul of it already. We have Miles Davis in P2, the young driver who did so well in his maiden season last year. He's back for some more action, and he is demonstrating one of our front-wheel drive GTVs, a fine race car, I do say so myself. Have very briefly driven it, but this thing's all about straight line speed. It is a bit of a monster when it comes to the straight line performance, and it should mean that we're going to end up with some very interesting battles this season, because there's a bit more of a level playing field. Obviously, it's really impressive what we see the likes of Miles Davis, Matt Daly, Colin Knief, Andrew Whitehead doing in these cars, as we have them for many a season. And we know that everyone throughout the whole field has some fun out there on track, but we want to make sure even more people have even more fun. So what we've been able to do is find these two really impressive race cars that are very close together in terms of their overall pace, but one's just a little bit more approachable than the other. So it does mean that drivers that may struggle, for example, in the 4C, are just giving a bit more of a chance in that GTV. We've already ran a couple of test sessions. We saw the likes of Paul Millman and Steve Knight battling it out with Matt Daly and Andrew Whitehead, and that just means we're going to be on for a really exciting season, folks. Not just new cars, though, a couple of new and returning drivers as well. So hello to Anthony Merengue. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Do correct me if I am wrong there, Anthony. But currently in that GTV in the pits. 10th overall in the session so far, a 1:51.992. John Baker as well, great to see that name back in the AROC Racing Leagues. Currently in 11th in this session at 1:52.2. Fabulous looking livery on that car, very reminiscent of an old McLaren in quite a few ways. So the Alpha Shop liveried car there, currently circulating round, heading towards the end of the lap now. It looks like we're just running down through the Corintano and then down through Buccine in just a moment. You're going to have to forgive me, folks. Some of the pronunciations for all these Italian circuits this season are going to be a little bit butchered. And obviously, we've got plenty of Italian circuits this season because, as I mentioned early on, this is the Giro D'Italia this year, which means that we do get to visit some fabulous circuits. Both championships, the Giulia GT4 next week and this 4C and GT3, kick off at Mugello, followed by Aviano in 2 weeks' time. Then we have Enna Perugia, I'll try that again. Enna Pergusa on the 8th of April for this championship, followed by Imola, Monza, Old Ring Park, Vallelunga and Mugello once again to complete the running this season. There was Franciacorta on the calendar as well, but it was a, shall we say, a little bit of a testing circuit for some of these more powerful cars, so we decided it's probably best to give that one a miss this time around. But I am just so excited to be back. I mean, we've only been gone 2 weeks since the last bit of AROC Racing Leagues action, but it is nice to see some new cars out on track. Nice to see some fresh faces as well. I already mentioned Anthony and John. There are two drivers that we were expecting, but I must say, at the AROC sections and registrars meeting at the weekend, Andrew Whitehead, Mr. Ted, did a fantastic job of recruiting some extra members into the fold there. So we say hello once again to Rob Whitney, who's back for some more AROC Racing Leagues action. That fabulous looking GTV there with the Parts World colour scheme on it. Currently running in 9th in this session. Rob Whitney is back and looking really excited to get back involved. So Julietta Registrar running well, and then we have another registrar, not just the meter registrar who's talking about things. We have Nathan Mahoney joining us as well. Great to see Nathan jumping in on the action. Has got a bit of sim racing experience in the past, and that is very evident, I must say, because 6th already on the qualifying debut in the GTV Pro. This is really impressive stuff, Mr. Mahoney there. Currently 6th, as I say, a 150.7. He's our GT registrar in the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. So great to see everyone from all walks of life in the AROC Racing Leagues getting involved. So if you haven't already done so, links have been provided. There should be a link in the description of this stream as well, so do get involved if this looks like the type of thing that you could see yourself keeping entertained with of a Wednesday evening. And obviously all these races will happen every Wednesday for the foreseeable, until quite a while actually. Let me see if we've got the schedule towards the very end. Yeah, this is going to be going on well into the summer, is this format of racing, before we swap over to H2 for 2026. So I think that's a lot of the admin out of the way. Let's get a bit more into the racing action for this qualifying session, as we've already got quite a bit of action out on track. That is going to be John Baker, our two newcomers, having a little bit of a skirmish together. That was on the run through the Luco left-hander there by the looks of things. But John Baker heads back to the pits. Nathan Mahoney actually, I think had an attempt at trying to continue on, but will need to pit in order to get that car back up to its fine racing form. I want to say a big hello to Wendy Stone in the broadcast chat, who says, number 62, we're rooting for you, John. That is fantastic to see the support here already. And if you are watching along and you are supporting anyone or just tuning in to the action, do let us know who you're watching, who you're supporting here today. Do let us know what your hopes are for the championship. Any burning questions that you might have as well, do get those into the broadcast. We do monitor the chat throughout the event this evening, as we do have 9 minutes to go in this session. Eight and a half minutes left on our clock now. Let's see what the order is going to be looking like then in this session. Well, currently Andrew Whitehead does still lead as a 149.056 in that 4C, which does look very planted, doesn't it, folks? Got a great shot from inside the car here. We jump aboard with Jack Hodson now. I know Jack's been putting a lot of hard work in behind the scenes to get this season underway, as have the likes of Andrew Whitehead, as have the likes of Andrew Brammer, who keeps our server rolling. Guy Swarbrick as well. Apologies for missing anyone else off, but a lot of people have been very involved in making sure the AROC Racing Leagues can continue on in fine form. And what a packed grid we've got this evening, folks. I want to say a big thank you to everyone. We've got 14 drivers out on track. I was briefly out on track yesterday when we were doing a server test in this, my little 75. I'm pleased to report, though, you won't be seeing it out on track once again, because those of you who were in that test session do well know that the brakes do leave something to be desired, as it left for a rather comical scene on the grid. Either way, 7.5 minutes to go, as that's an interesting line there from Andy Webb, who ends up in a bit of a tyre barrier, does very well to get stopped just in time. But Andy Webb, where is he currently in this running? He's currently 9th overall in this session, as Anthony Merengue improves quite nicely there to go 7th with a 150.6. So this is just another example, folks, of the work that's gone into picking these two cars this season. Look at how close the order is overall through qualifying. 149. I mean, yes, I know we've got a couple of stragglers down in 12th and 13th, guys, Rorik and Steve Knight, just finding a little bit of pace, a little bit of form in these cars this evening. But other than that, we're covered by a couple of seconds, really, overall. Really impressive stuff, and it looks like we're going to be on for a fantastic bit of midfield action, it must be said. Colin Keneath kind of heads that midfield section with a 150.3, then a couple of tenths behind, that's going to be Hodson. Then we have our newcomers here, who are all looking to be in a fine shape this evening. As we go on board with John Baker, who improves through that middle sector, loses out slightly through the middle, and we just see there entering the final third of the lap, goes a little bit too deep into the Scarperia corner there, the right-hander. So will be compromised overall in terms of that run, but should have plenty of time left in this session, 6 minutes to go, to find a bit of pace and bring a challenge for race one. Now, if you are new this evening to tuning in, to taking part, whatever capacity that you are new to the AROC Racing Leagues, first of all, a big welcome. But just a reminder how the racing is formatted for the evening. So we do have our 20-minute qualifying session there or thereabouts, which is coming to an end in just over 5 minutes. Before we have a couple of minutes break, we jump then into race one. Race one, the grid is settled based on how qualifying is looking. Should be very familiar if you've watched a bit of racing in the past. And those of you who have watched other forms of racing will be familiar with what comes next, which is the reverse grid action after that. So we have 25 minutes of racing action for race one, another pause, and then we head into the reverse grid. And that is where the top few drivers are sent to the back end of the pack to work their way up through the order in order to try and complete that race. On the podium, they have to work their way through the field. And what that does is that gives those drivers who might have struggled in race one a bit of another opportunity to fight for some points in race two, as they will start higher up the grid than their competitors. But Andrew Whitehead still leads us, still looking very high up the grid at the moment. Half a second is the advantage for Whitehead over Knief, which is a very impressive run indeed. Very early on, he put that really strong lap in and has looked pretty comfortable. Other than that, Knief runs in second and was struggling in kind of the upper midfield a little bit, but now continued on up into second place. And then we have Andy Craig, who's putting in a really nice effort here. Goes personal best through that middle sector, crosses the line in that fabulous looking 4C there, a 149.975, so does make a nice improvement. In fact, no, that is the most recent improvement. I thought the timing system was a little bit behind in terms of time, but no, 149.975 there for Andy Craig. Whitehead's going to be next to cross the line here. As we see, across the start-finish straight we go. An improvement through that first sector. Actually slower through sector 2 and sector 3, but it was a purple, so a best overall out of anyone through the first sector on the last lap means it's now a 149.046. So marginal gains being found here for Andrew Whitehead, but they can make all the difference. I get the feeling, folks, that as we head into the final few minutes of this qualifying session, things are going to really heat up. Knief seems to be on a charge at the moment, seems to be able to find some real pace through a few of these corners. Likewise for Andy Craker as well. And this is forgetting the midfield action that's happening. Andy Webb, currently in 9th, returns to us this season, a 151.2, the best lap so far. But currently going personal best through the middle sector, heads round the final corner onto the Blondetti straight. Apologies, no, that's a couple of corners before. It's been a while since I've been at Mugello, can you tell? But crosses the line. Andy Webb does improve there, a 150.7. That's a nice few tenths found to jump up into 8th position on the road. So getting closer to his former rivals from the previous season. Who's going to be next to cross the line? And John Cole, currently running in 5th overall, pushes that front wheel drive GTV onto the start finish straight with a decent amount of pace there, it must be said. Looked really strong out corner exit onto the start finish straight. Has a 150.2 to beat. Can he beat it? Not quite yet. Remains in 5th for the time being. Just behind is a 4C. That looks to be the 4C of Matt Daly by any chance. Let's see, it is the 4C of Matt Daly. Now, those of you who are new to this racing series tonight may not be familiar with Matt Daly's qualifying strategy, and that is to just enjoy your own, personal space, if you will, not being in the qualifying session with everyone else. Might just be sat in single player, putting a few laps in. Then what he does, he turns up straight into qualifying, usually with about 3 minutes to go, and will just smash in a very fast lap, leaving us completely bewildered as to how he did it. That seems to be the Matt Daly strategy. Hasn't quite worked out so far. That is because he's only done an outlap at first sector at 26.9. That's looking competitive. That is certainly at least in the upper midfield, if not faster than that. Now runs down through the Arabiatas and back up towards sector 3 in just a moment. Let's see, we do have a bit of a reference in front. It is a different car, but we can still use that as a reference by all means. The brake discs glow red hot as Daly scrubs off all the speed you carry through the Arabiatas there and gets slowed down into sector 3. It was a 32.6 through that second sector as well. Once again, looking very strong, in fact, for Matt Daly as it stands. I should also note Colin Keefe improving. If you do want to follow along with the timing, folks, you can do so at aroc2.empressservers.com/live-timing. I'll try to get that as a link for you guys in the broadcast chat as well. But we come towards the end of Sector 2 now. Only a couple of corners to go here in Sector 3. Has gained rather substantially on John Cole, the GT3 up in front. Sorry, to GTV, not a GT3 up in front. John Cole dives into the pits. That just leaves Daly to head down the start-finish straight. 60 seconds left on the clock. What can the car in yellow do? It's going to be a 149.4. Leapfrogs ahead of Craker, ahead of Davis, ahead of Keneef, and goes into second place in this session. Not to be outdone, Colin Keneef is heading towards the end of the lap himself with a purple Sector 2 and a personal best through the first part of the lap. This is really intensifying now, folks. A battle of 4Cs versus GT3s so far. Very much going the way of the 4C. A slightly quicker car overall, but certainly one that is more difficult to tame. We'll have to see how these drivers can cope over 25 minutes worth of racing, but Keneef is coping pretty well, it must be said. Purple sector through that middle, heads onto the start, finish straight. 30 seconds left to go in this session. Will it be a provisional pole for Colin Keneef? Oh, it will. It's a 148.7. That's 0.3 of a second there for the car in black and orange. A substantial time gained there, not to be outdone though. Andrew Whitehead is just behind the timer. Very close to hitting zero. I think Keneef's going to carry on pushing for some more fast laps, but Whitehead is not to be outdone here at all. This is going to be one of those qualifying melees which I think sets the scene for what should be an action-packed season. The checkered flag is waved. That's all that can be done. If you're John Cole, Jack Hodson or Rob Whitney, a really nice return to form there for Rob Whitney, a 151.4. Hopefully we'll see some great racing from him this evening. Miles Davis completes the session as well. Can't quite crack into the 149s, but does at least finish the session as the fastest GTV that we've got here this evening. Steve Knight heads on to the start finish straight as well, trying to improve on a 153.7. Not quite able to do so this time round, but let's watch out for Matt Daly, who navigates the final corner once again. Doesn't improve through Sector 1. Personal best through Sector 2. Sector 3 is going to make all the difference in this one. It's the 49.4 to beat. Provisional pole very much on the cards here for our first round of the season. Does improve. It's a 149.3, but doesn't improve enough to challenge for that pole. Guy Swarbrick, someone we haven't seen at all this evening in his GTV with his now traditional livery, heads on to the start finish straight at 53.5 to beat. Can we do it? Does in fact do it. Nearly gets into the 52s. Well done to Guy Swarbrick there, but here's what we're waiting for, and Andrew Whitehead abandons the run. Andrew Whitehead with that challenge for pole in this session ends up relenting, gives up the fight very late on. That's it from Andrew Whitehead. Then Colin Keneef heads on to the start finish straight at this point, seemingly pretty much unchallenged. Can he improve? It's looking good so far. It's a 148.6, half a second near enough on Andrew Whitehead. Blistering performance from the Scotsman there, who makes his return to the AROC Racing Leagues. A fantastic turn of pace there for Colin Keneef. I think it's going to be a great season for him. Andy Craker doesn't improve in the end. We only have one more driver out on track. That's Anthony Marengi, a 150.7 to beat. Let's see what it's looking like as he returns into the pits as well. There we go then, folks. Our first qualifying session of a new season, a new era for the AROC Racing Leagues. And what a qualifying session it was. In the end, Colin Keneef takes pole in this one and will line up on the front row of the grid. Alongside him, though, will be Andrew Whitehead in what should be a fantastic battle. The second row will comprise of Matt Daly and Andy Craker. There's your top two rows. We're going to take more of a look at them, though, on the grid in a few minutes. I'm going to take a quick break and be back as we get ready on the grid, ready for race one. And welcome back to the action, folks. Here we are on the grid, ready for race 1 here at Mugello this evening, our inaugural race of the 2026 Giro D'Italia action. Very much looking forward to it. As I say, just over a minute now until lights out. So let's do a bit more background info. Let's get that all out of the way before we can get into the racing stuff, which is what we all want to see. So here we are, Colin Knief and Whitehead on the grid against Matt Daly and Craig on row 2, followed by Miles Davis and John Cole on the 3rd row. Now these cars, as you can see, a mix of 4C and GT3. Let's kick off with our 4Cs that have certainly impressed in qualifying here at Mugello. 351 horsepower on tap, around about 1,200 kilos in GT trim, so quite a lot of stuff added to these cars, but obviously plenty of downforce. Actually a 2-litre is the model of this car, so slightly wider track than the regular road car, of course. Not that the road car isn't already a very squat thing, but yeah, impressive piece of machinery. Then the GTV, about 400 horsepower going down to the front wheels, and slightly lighter as well, but obviously it is front wheel drive. Should make an interesting balance, as I say. But speaking of balance, let's see what things are going to look like in terms of the playing field for the run down to turn 1 here. Then 20 seconds until lights out. As I say, it's Knief versus Whitehead, Daly versus Craker, Davis versus Cole, Jack Hodgson versus Anthony Marengi, and then we have Andy Webb versus Nathan Mahoney at top 10. Usually that'll be enough, but we also have Rob Whitney, John Baker, Guy Swarbrick and Steve Knight, your competitors this evening. The revs begin to rise. We have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away for race 1 here this evening at Mugello. It's a poor start for Colin Knief, who slightly bogs down on the shift up the 2nd gear. We navigate our way down to the San Donato right-hander to make our first corner of the lap. It becomes a drag race that Andrew Whitehead is in fact leading. He will have the outside of the Corso, so will struggle on that regard. Knief dives back into the race lead as we navigate that long sweeping right-hander to start the lap. Meanwhile, Davis gets ahead of Daly with a fantastic start to this race. John Cole versus Andy Craker briefly, but Anthony Marengi with a fantastic start on his AROC Racing Leagues debut. Craker has a look around the outside. There's big contact involving Miles Davis there. Unfortunately, one of our shining stars of last season's running has a difficult start to this season, but I'm sure we'll be able to recover. As I say, that's part of what the reverse grid is for as well. It's drivers who have an unfortunate run in race 1 can improve things in race 2 as well. All the action here is going to be in the mid-pack, isn't it, folks? We can see Craker, a bit of a cork in the bottle almost, in 4th at the moment, as Jack Hodgson is desperate to try and find a way on past. Through the Arabiatas we go. Should see the nose on that 4C, turns in beautifully, almost makes the GTV seem like a bit of a boat in comparison, just because of the sheer size of the thing. The GTV, a normal sized rose car, the 4C, a tiny low slung sports car in front of it as well. But what a fine match they appear to be so far. This is great stuff. As we see further down the order, there is a little bit of contention, a couple of drivers having a few issues there. Steve Knight able to collect it, Guy Swarbrick running in 10th as well. Who is that? That is John Cole, I think, who we saw briefly spinning out. And there we see Miles Davis ahead of Andy Webb as well, though. Fantastic noise from these cars, I must add. We haven't really talked about that so far this evening, but the turbocharged mix of the 4Cs against those V6 powered GTVs, a fantastic soundtrack to go racing around some beautiful Italian venues. What a treat we're going to be in for this season, folks. Meanwhile, out in front, Knief leading the charge a little bit more comfortably, while Whitehead and Daly enjoy a battle into that first corner. We can see Whitehead on the defence here, but Matt Daly's going to try and hang it around the outside here. It nearly works. Meanwhile, we have a whole fleet of cars running into that first corner, trying to battle it out for P4. Marengi is hanging it in for P5. Let's go side by side with Hodgson, contact door to door, in fact, with Jack Hodgson, and Marengi does relent the position there. I'm not entirely sure that he wasn't a bit of a passenger in that one, but either way, continues on in P6, and he's having a great debut race here. What a drive for Anthony Marengi. There is Andy Craker, and just behind John Baker as well. Now, John Baker hasn't really been talked about too much in this race so far, because it's been a bit of an action-packed one, hasn't it, folks? And I think John Baker has just been keeping the nose clean and just waiting for the opportunity to potentially arise out in front of him. So could be on for a really strong race here based on what happens elsewhere throughout the pack. And we're going to be in for an interesting race, as I say, strategy-wise, because these two cars are very different in their nature. They have their own perks, their own weaknesses. So it will be very interesting indeed to see how things do shape up. Now, Nathan Mahoney here is currently running along in P6. Now, this may be intentional. He may not have realised it yet. He may have not been. Not all sim racing championships are, you know, open setup, open tyre, etc. and he's still running on the soft, which is what you want to be on in qualifying. Circuit dependent, of course, but I imagine here in the race, after 25 minutes in the front-wheel drive chassis, that soft may be beginning to just open up and start to lose some of its sheen. But for now, what Nathan Mahoney can do is just scythe his way through the pack, or at least do his best to do that with the extra grip that the soft tyre will offer compared to the harder compound medium, which will take longer to wear out, but will also take longer to get on song and kind of show its true merit. So very interesting strategic play potentially on the cards tonight, folks. Well, here we go. Anthony Marengi, your rookie, by the way, currently running along in fourth. What a fantastic start to his AROC Racing Leagues career. I think we're in for a real treat, as I've said so many times this evening, folks. I think we're in for a really interesting season, possibly the most interesting season we've had for some time. We see Craig has a look down the inside there, as we see Hodson actually relinquish his position. I think maybe caught a bit of gravel there and just scrubbed off all the momentum from that car. 20 minutes to go on the clock already. Time flies when you're having fun, as we go side by side through the Luco left-hander there. Blistering stuff from Hodson, from Baker, from Mahoney. These GTVs look very raceable indeed. They look like a real treat to wrestle around. Well, I don't even think you need to wrestle, and I think they look quite compliant from what I can see. So I think these drivers are really going to enjoy battling out in these cars, and they do make a fantastic noise as well, which obviously certainly helps. Let's have a look at the front end of the pack then, which hasn't always been the case over the past season or so, but we haven't had a chance to look at for a little while in this race because, well, all the action's been happening elsewhere. But there is plenty of action still going on for the front end. Meanwhile, Whitney gets ahead of John Cole, and I think we're going to be on for a great battle there, as I've just seen the number of GTVs all occupying the final corner. But Colin Knief does lead us by about a second, but is not running away from the likes of Whitehead and Daly. Now, this is going to be a bit of one of those moments where drivers going to need to kind of demonstrate some sportsmanship and some intelligent thinking if they want to try and work together, perhaps to close up to Colin Knief. They need to kind of put the differences aside for now and think, come on, let's catch up to Colin, and we can have our fight for P1 once we've got ahead of Colin. I don't know whether that will happen or whether what we are going to see is Whitehead. Whitehead. There's two. There's WHI. There's two WHIs in the roster this season. I think what we are going to see is Whitehead and Daly battling it out over P2 before we see a fight for P1. Meanwhile, further elsewhere in the field, still plenty going on. We've got Jack Hodson ahead of John Baker, but John Baker putting up a really good fight, currently trading personal best sectors, if you will, at the moment. John Baker looking to have the slight upper hand in terms of pace overall. His best lap not quite there with Jack Hodson's, but the last lap, importantly for him, absolutely was. It was in fact a couple of seconds quicker, folks, quicker on that last lap. So I think certainly as we head into the mid phase of this race, Baker might come alive here and might just have a way of getting some really good opportunities presenting themselves to him in terms of overtakes. But I want to give another mention, a big hello to all of you watching along this evening. Numbers are looking really strong on the stream so far, so a big thank you all for tuning in. Do drop your comments on the broadcast in the chat below. Do let us know who you're supporting. Do let us know, I don't know, maybe what register you're from, who you are even. I'd like to say a quick hello to you. Maybe just say, would you get involved as well? What's your favourite car out of the two? That's a good question. Let's go for that one out of the many that I've just picked there. 4C versus GTV, folks. What are you picking and why? Let me know in the chat and we'll have a great debate over it, if we get a chance to, but I think there's too much racing going on elsewhere. We can see that is going to be John Cole versus Miles Davis. Miles Davis, you know, it's a decent turn of pace. Last lap for Miles Davis, a 1:50.8 versus John Cole's 1:51.9. So we're going to be on for a great battle between these two. To see, looking around the outside is Miles Davis, heading around the final corner. It becomes a drag race once again. There could be a difference in setup here, but I should not move away from that camera because that Busso sounds glorious. Let's see if we can jump on board with that angle yet again. But this is going to be a great look down into that run into the first corner. The San Donato right-hander. Really brave corner is this one. It's a increasing rate, or it's a continuous radius right-hand banked corner. There's actually quite a lot of camber to it. And that braking zone is really tricky because of the elevation change in the circuit, and you're carrying, in these cars in particular, an immense amount of speed. So judging that braking zone is a very important, very tricky, certainly not a skill that I have. Either way, we run through the first couple of corners on the lap. Now, Cole, looking very much under pressure now, is certainly looking a bit more defensive. Gives Davis a brief opportunity there before immediately siding back across the track and saying, no, thank you, Miles, you're not finding a way past just yet. As we have 16 minutes left to go in this one now. 16 minutes of our maiden race in this season, of course. Plenty going on at the front end of the pack, but I'm really enjoying this battling duo, to be honest. Davis versus Cole, as Miles Davis leaps out in front, or at least attempts to, as we run it down through the Pelagio left-hander. And there we go, back into single file formation once again. Before you run the right-hander down to the Blondettis coming up in just a moment. Apexing beautifully both drivers there. Miles Davis looking very poised to try and find a way on through, but we're headed to one of the narrow parts of Mugello here. I mean, Mugello's not exactly the widest circuit in the world in terms of, at least in terms of the high speed stuff, if you're in some more old school touring cars, but here you're going to really struggle to get your overtakes done as you head around the left hand of the final corner before you head back onto the start finish straight. Now the gap, the delta between these two does in fact build up ever so slightly, and it just looks to be that down this start finish straight, John Cole has a very slight advantage even in the slipstream. Not quite enough that Miles Davis can do in order to catch up. 15 minutes left on the clock. Then let's go back to the front end of the pack where Colin Knief still leads as a really impressive run. 1 second is the gap between himself and P2. Less than that, though, is the gap between Daly and Whitehead just behind. And these three, I must say, really controlling things quite nicely in this 4C. We do know the 4C does have an ever so slight advantage overall in terms of pace. You're never going to get two differing models of car, especially when they're so different. You know, one's mid-engine rear-wheel drive, one's front-engine V6, front-wheel drive. You're never going to get pace that is identical, especially across a field of drivers as well. But to say that we've got this close in terms of one lap pace, I know obviously there's an 11-second gap here, but to say that in terms of qualifying you were within tenths, that is really impressive stuff given how different the cars are. And I think what it does mean is we effectively treat this as a bit of a multi-class season, if you will. We know the 4Cs, if the drivers can tame them, and more on that in a second, will be the quicker car, but that's not to say that there are not plaudits that go to those who can lead the charge in the GTV running. And currently it's Anthony Merengue, the rookie this season, who leads the charge in the GTVs and does so very well indeed. Hodson's running in P2 out of the GTVs, and then we have John Baker in P3, so on for a GTV podium this evening. Really impressive run for the red and white liveried car there, as we see John Cole and Miles Davis continuing on a fantastic battle. Now I know John Cole loves to keep us in touch with what he kind of thought of the racing and everything, and I really welcome that. It's lovely to hear it from the drivers, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing what John Cole has to say about the action this evening. We do in fact approach the halfway mark in this race one already. Time flies when you're having fun, as I say. And as I say, it's looking pretty clear cut that our 4Cs here at Mugello at least are controlling things quite nicely at the moment, but that is not to say the battling is over. We know the three of them are very close at the moment, and that is not to say that things won't change as we head into further venues. Now, the 4C, the reason we put the more experienced drivers in it is slightly more of a tricky beast to tame, shall we say. It does have a twitchy nature to it sometimes. Hasn't bitten anyone yet in this race so far, but it certainly could do. And that will present opportunities for the drivers, to the GTVs, and also we do have opportunities further in the season for drivers to swap. So if we feel like someone maybe wants to go in the GTV or might be best off in the GTV, we can absolutely swap them around. Likewise, if a GTV driver wants to have a shot in the 4C around about the halfway point, by all means, we're gonna see some drivers swapping cars. So it's going to be as fair as we can make it across the two cars, which are very close in terms of pace. It's going to be a really interesting season, folks, because there's so much at play. There's so much strategy to think about. Maybe you think, I'm not going to spend too much time practicing in the 4C in the first half of the season because I know I need a bit more time practicing in the GTV, or I know I'm going to score more points in the second half of the season. There is just so much to think about, folks. I can barely squeeze it into one broadcast, so I'll try not to do that before I bore you all to sleep. It's 12 minutes to go on the clock, though, in this race one, our first race of the season. And so far, Knief leads ahead of Whitehead and Daly. Your top three all occupying one camera shot out on track as they head into the San Donato first corner. Less than 2 seconds separates the three of them. We haven't seen too much side-by-side action from these three just yet, but I'm sure we are going to get some as we head further into this race. Let's see what else we've got out on track as well, shall we? As I mentioned earlier on, Anthony Merengue is looking really strong in 4th at the moment, followed by Andy Craker in 5th. That livery looks lovely, by the way, that 4C. I must say, really strong livery. A big thank you to Andrew Whitehead, who's put in an immense effort turning around all of these liveries for all of these cars so quickly. He's done a really good job this season. In particular, I think they all look fantastic. Jack Hodson runs in 6th, then ahead of John Baker. John Baker, what's his pace looking like at the moment? Well, best lap at 1 minute 52, so firmly cementing himself there in this upper midfield action. Sorry, I just thought I'd go quiet then so you got to enjoy some Busso noises. Anyway, I'm back now. If you hear me you're going to hear me do that a lot this season, because we're going to get to that A-pillar camera angle where you hear the intake of the Busso, and I'm just going to stop talking, and I'm sure you completely support that. Either way, P8 is going to be John Cole, who is potentially not going to be P8 for much longer, because there's Miles Davis, and there is John Cole dipping onto the grass. I am so sorry. Oh no, it goes from bad to worse. It goes from bad to worse as we have John Cole and Miles Davis in a bit of a collision. The commentator's curse off first hit of the season there. As I say, he may not be P8 for much longer. I didn't quite mean like that, and I do apologise. Might pin that one on me. It might be my fault. Miles Davis is able to continue on, as is John Cole. John Cole actually staged P8. Miles Davis has lost some time. A bit of an unfortunate racing incident between those two. But Rob Whitney is a driver we haven't actually talked about in race 1 so far, but he's running along very nicely indeed in 9th position. This is great to see Rob Whitney back in the action. As I mentioned, he's one of our registrars who's running with us this season, and well, yeah, back on points potentially, which is a great way to kick off the points side. A reminder, your top 10 scorers in the racing are those who score points to add to their championship tally. But as I say, we might start to do things quite differently for the 4Cs and the GTVs, at least if we don't do it officially. I'll go back and do some maths at some point. I'll try and make kind of 2 championships, if you will. Might get a bit of Excel or Microsoft Copilot wizardry to help me out with that. So Rob Whitney on merit, on for points on his, I'm not going to call it debut, his return to racing, which is fantastic to see. Miles Davis then still on for some points here, but maybe not as many as we would have wanted. Guy Schwarbeck not too far off the points actually in this one, and still doing very well in the GTV running. On for a bit of a battle potentially with the likes of Steve Knight. Steve Knight currently ahead of Andy Webb, so Andy Webb needs to pick his moments carefully here to find a way past here at the often tight Mugello. Has looked down the inside but can't find a way past just yet. This is, I'm sure, a brilliant evening for Steve Knight, who's having a great time out there, and something we didn't see actually. What happened to Nathan Mahoney there? I didn't quite catch that one, sorry folks. I wonder if he's abandoned the soft tyre running. I hope everything's all right in the cockpit of that car. He's able to get back underway. So let's hope we see some more of him from race 2 coming up in just under 10 minutes time. But looking elsewhere, got a bit of a battle brewing, folks. Here we go. Anthony Merengue, who's been running really well here in 4th for quite a few laps, might be under some pressure. Is still the lead GTV, so that is really strong showing either way, but he wants 4th on the road overall, I am sure. Andy Craker has something to say about that, though, as we head onto the start-finish straight. Down towards San Donato we go. The gap stays pretty consistent. That GTV does have some really impressive legs, has a 50 horsepower advantage over the 4C, but the 4C has all that downforce, has that mid-engine layout, and heads into that first corner, makes a few hundreds already as we exit that first corner and run down through the Luco left-hander now. And I think Mugello is actually a fantastic venue to debut these 2 cars, this format of AROC Racing Leagues action at, because it's obviously plenty of high-speed stuff, but also a real test of the grip of the platform of these cars as well, a real test of downforce and mechanical grip too, because yes, you got all those high speeds, but you got plenty of high-speed corners as well, and that traditional mid-engine rear-wheel drive, big splitter, big wing setup of the 4C lends itself to that. Still got plenty of power as well. It's just the GTV has a little bit extra, as we see the GTV in front of us is using that extra power to its best at the moment to try and keep that 4C behind. Andy Krager on a fly here, as is Anthony Merengue. This is, we've had 2 seasons in a row now of some really impressive debut performances from drivers, so really nice to see people getting involved in the AROC Racing Leagues and already hitting the ground running and enjoying themselves with some racing action, which again goes to show, if you're umming and ahhing about joining, why not do it? There's going to be some racing to do for you, and you're going to have a great time. But Kraker has a look down the inside as we run down into Sector 3 in just a moment. Through the final corner we go, and you can just see out of the left-hander there, the start, heading on to the start-finish straight, the GTV could just slowly unwind its steering and put that absolute nuclear bomb of power to use heading down the start-finish straight. It's brilliant to see this changing battle between these 2 cars. The 4C clearly has the advantage through the twisty stuff, but then the GTV just romps away down the straight. This is fantastic. I hope you guys are enjoying it as much as I am enjoying commentating. I haven't seen any advances in the chat, folks, on what your favourite cars are. Do let me know. Come on, what are we thinking? 4C versus GTV. Get those opinions in the chat. I want to hear from you guys as we have 5 minutes left to go in race 1. Don't worry though, folks. We've still got more action to come. A few minutes break before we head into our reverse grid action later on this evening. Well, I do want to give a big hello to everyone who is watching. As I say, numbers are looking pretty good this evening, so a big thank you to everyone. I did share it around in the Mito registered chat. Probably a little bit of shameless promo there, given it's not entirely Mito related, but if anyone from the Mito register is watching, hello, how are you? Let me know if you are from the Mito register and you've tuned in. We might do some Mito stuff at some point in the future. There are some plans potentially on the wraps for a little bit of a hot lap challenge, maybe something like that. I won't delve into too much for now, but there is going to be plenty of Mito related action in the real world and in the sim stuff as well. So do tune in for that type of stuff here. As I could honestly, for the next 4 minutes, I could keep the camera tuned in on these two because they are battling so well. They're not out and out side by side trading paint, but they are just trying to get the better of each other out on track. They're clearly applying pressure to each other out on the circuit here, and it is a thoroughly enjoyable race to behold. I'm going to go back on board with Colin Kenetha because for the first time in a little while, he looks like he may be under a slight bit of pressure here now, because Whitehead's within half a second there or thereabouts. He's certainly within 1 second, and Daly's nearly within 1 second, in fact, as they are, 3 of them separated by only half a second each. I've said second a lot there, but hopefully you get the gist of what's going on. Basically, a close battle for the race lead is beginning to brew with 3.5 minutes to go in this race. Just behind as well, as we looked at for a few laps, the Merengue versus Kraker. Elsewhere in the pack, we see Rob Whitney versus Miles Davis, a fight that is certainly brewing. Meanwhile, Andy Webb gets ahead of Steve Knight as they go side by side onto the start-finish straight. Andy Webb should have the upper hand here, but that GTV is so strong in a straight line, it just brings him right back into contention. But there we go, Andy Webb down the inside into turn 1, does get the car in front this time round. Three minutes left to go, and here we go. All of a sudden, Knief just looks a little bit more confident because Whitehead is going to be the driver under the most pressure now. They head on to the start-finish straight yet again. And we see it becomes effectively a slipstream drag race now. Whose car is doing the least work to punch a hole through the air? They're going to go quicker. They're going to set themselves up for a move down into that first corner. Knief is romping away, it must be said. Whitehead is certainly under threat from the car in yellow just behind, but they stay in the same positions for the time being. No big changes for now. 2.5 minutes left on the clock. There's battles aplenty. I could pick anywhere to go and tune in, really. What a treat. I haven't had this privilege for a few races now. It's nice to be back in this position. I'm really looking forward, actually, to hearing what the drivers have to say about the action this evening after this one. As I say, it's a whole new era for us. Big changes. Really excited we have had these developments, because I think we're going to be in for some great action, and I don't think this is the last that you've heard from the AROC Racing Leagues in our Owners Club at all. I think we've got more to come. Again, section registrars evening. It was definitely a topic section registrars weekend. It was certainly a topic of conversation because it's something unique, something really enjoyable that we as a club have. So it's another reason to get involved if you haven't already, as I say. But it's just another fantastic part of the club, and it's a privilege to be a part of it. But less than 2 minutes to go now in this one, and no major changes between this top three who've just been battling each other really well. They've not put a foot wrong. That is something that is certainly worth mentioning. We are still early days in our experience with these cars. We're still learning about setups, learning about what the cars like, learning about how they behave over a race stint, and these drivers have not slipped up once, as it looks to be that Craig has eventually, sorry we missed it folks, found a way on past the GTV of Anthony Marangi. There has put up a fantastic fight, as Anthony, for so long in this race, but eventually that 4C does find a way on through. Still a minute left to go though, certainly not over yet. We have seen crazier things folks in the past. We have seen last lap battle here at Mugello. I remember Matt Daly running out of fuel with a substantial race lead of about 30 or so seconds, ran out of fuel through the Blondettis and had to stop here out on track just on the exit the final corner and gave up. As we see Andy Craig clearly not very confident in the straight line abilities of his 4C as he darts across the circuit to try and break that slipstream. Possibly the worst thing he could do, to be honest, because that GTV is happy to keep up weaving about, but has the straight line performance as well. Has a look down the inside. Does Anthony Marangi? They go side by side, gets a nose out in front. Can he hang on to it? Yes, he can. Gets the car out in front. There's contact between the two. Craig, bless him, tries to hang on around the outside, and in fact does. It looks like a small error there over the apex for Anthony Marangi. Has to bail out of it on the exit of Luco, and there we go. Andy Craig back into the lead of this battle. Meanwhile, into the lead of the race goes Andrew Whitehead. We did not see that one either, folks. Apologies. All happening now at the front end of this race. Matt Daly's going to fancy his chances on overtaking Colin Knief. Now, where are we? We're actually heading through the... I can't even tell you where we are, to be honest. We're all so close. We're heading through the Blondettis now. There we go. So much is happening in this race, folks. Whitehead and Daly eventually find a way in front of Colin Knief after 25 long minutes, and this is the last lap, folks. It all happens on the last lap, as I was just saying. Through the final corner we go. The car in red now leads us, but it becomes a drag race to determine who is going to be on the top step of the podium to determine the podium overall. Andrew Whitehead leads us on to the start-finish straight and takes race victory. Matt Daly brings it home second, and Colin Knief, after 25 minutes of leading this race, brings it home, rounding out the podium in third. What a shame for Knief, but what a battle we were treated to there, folks. That's your top three settled, but it's not over quite yet. A couple of corners to go for some other of our drivers here. In the end, Andy Craig does get in front of Anthony Marangi after that battle, which started to brew on the final lap as well. It's going to be the 4C in the end, completing a 4C top four, bringing it home at the end of this race. Andy Craig completes it in P4. Anthony Marangi completes your top five there as well. We have a bit of a wait then, in fact, to Jack Hodson, who runs along in P6, going to be your second place GTV in this session, and then completing the GTV podium, John Baker on return to the AROC Racing Leagues. This is fantastic stuff for John there, who completes, as I say, the GTV podium just ahead of John Cole and Rob Whitney in the GTV top five there. So John Cole, the number 74 plated car there, brings it home in 8th, and Rob Whitney bringing it home in 9th, and then completing the top 10 in just a moment will be Miles Davis. Unfortunately for Miles Davis, it didn't really start out the best for him there. Hopefully he'll have more to recover in the reverse grid action in just a few minutes' time. Andy Webb then, after a battle at the end there, brings it home in P11 overall, and that will be ahead of Guy Strawbrick and Steve Knight, who actually looking pretty close as they head on to the start-finish straight, but they do round out our running this race. As nearly said this evening, don't worry folks, the action is not over just yet, because we're going to take a few minutes worth of a break now, but in a few minutes we're going to be back on the grid, ready for the reverse grid here at Mugello. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen, back on the grid and ready for race 2, a reverse grid race here at Mugello. Last bit of racing action we'll see this evening. Just over 90 seconds now until lights out, so let's have a look at what this reverse grid is shaping up to be. Well, on pole, it's going to be John Baker, followed by Jack Hodson, that's your front row of the grid, and then it's going to be Anthony Marenghi and Andy Craker on row 2. So it's a really strong start for some of our GTVs this time around. Let's see what they can do with them. I'm actually looking forward to this one. We saw the 4Cs obviously dominated qualifying. They set off and were able to kind of hold on to things at the front end of the pack. But when a 4C, as we saw with Craker, was behind the GTV, it did struggle to get past, given the straight line performance of these GTVs. So I think we're going to be in for a great battle from the front end here, because the GTVs do line up at the front, as I say. So it's Baker and Hodson on row 1, followed by Marenghi and Craker on the second row of the grid. Then we have Colin Knief and Matt Daly completing row 3, followed by Andrew Whitehead and John Cole on row 4. Then we have Rob Whitney and Miles Davis on row 5, followed by Andy Webb and Guy Schwarbrick on row 6. Then it's Steve Knight and Nathan Mahoney, who's back in on the action for the 7th row of the grid. Turns out Mahoney actually had a penalty to serve. He didn't quite clock it, so that's why he ended up back in the pits. But he is going to be taking part here in race 2, which is really exciting stuff. As it actually looks to be that he's getting some advice from Alan Matthews, which is great to see. Hello to you, Alan, by the way, for watching along at home or wherever you're watching from. Either way, we're about to get racing once again, so let's get going for our reverse grid action now. The revs begin to rise. We can already see, well, there's 10 red lights out on the track, but there's 6 red lights in our digital gantry, and we are away for race 2 here at Mugello. It's a poor start for John Baker there. Lots of wheel spin from that front-wheel drive GTV, which could potentially compromise him on the run down to the first corner. Already, Knief and Whitehead out in front. Hodson just about clinging on to P2 there as Baker falls on back. Cole pretty much barrels through the order there by the looks of it. We see plenty of contact going on through that first corner. It's a slightly eclectic start overall from everyone there. We are able to continue on at least. But there we go. There's going to be John Baker clinging onto things in P5 under pressure from Miles Davis as we go pretty much side by side, running down the San Lorenzo corner in just a moment. But Baker now in a really good defensive position here overall. We can see Davis has a look down the inside. This car sounds brilliant. I'm not going to shut up quite yet though, because we're really early on in the running of this race. As we go, have a look down side by side. There is contact between, that is Nathan Mahoney and Guy Schwarbrick there. Unfortunately, the back end of Mahoney's car there tagged. What a shame, as I think Mahoney will be able to continue on, but has lost some position. He's actually done very well, has Mahoney, to get immediately back in on the action. So well done to get jumped back on the track quite so quickly. Not all is lost in this one, as Anthony Marenghi has some big issues at the start of this one. Tumbles to the back end of the order. That's through the Arabiatas there, where he's been caught out. What a shame to see this race certainly being the slightly more bold side, shall we say. This is one that the replays, I think, will be looked at in particular detail overall in this one, as we have going to go on board with John Cole here. We were seeing some contact going on between a couple of cars after the first couple of corners, but all looks to be settled now. Andy Webb and Nathan Mahoney having a bit of contact, as well as Andy Webb is pirouetting around, gets back underway, and seemingly has no front wing left by the looks of the damage indicator there. Will be able to continue on, mightn't have the pace that he was otherwise expecting though. So yeah, the midfield certainly a bit eclectic. Sometimes this happens with the reverse grid racing, it must be said. Drivers, I think, just need to make sure that, you know, we are aware of the field spread being slightly different heading into the reverse grid action. The tyres going to be a lot colder than they were at the end of race 1, all that type of stuff to consider. I'm sure we'll get a bit more into the swing of things as we head further into the races this season though. John Baker is already in the swing of things very nicely indeed. We've got on board with him. He's running along in P5. Davis is just behind. And these two are going to be poised for a really good battle for the top 5 here, I suspect, because Baker's certainly got the pace against Miles Davis, who's had a slightly iffy start through race 1, but has a great run through the San Lorenzo corner there. Goes side by side. Can he hang on to it down the inside? I think he might have a real chance at it here. We run through Savelli, the left-hander coming up next now. Then a nose ekes out in front for Miles Davis there. He set that corner up move up a few corners ago, rather, and eventually he does get it on through. That's a really nice run there for Miles Davis. Now John Baker might be under threat from Guy Swarbrick here as John Cole finds a way on through on Guy Swarbrick potentially. Guy has a look down the inside there, nothing he can do just yet. Cole with some real bravery there, hangs it round the outside. We're still side by side in fact, and we make a slight bit of contact as Cole filters on through down the inside yet again, sees an opportunity and absolutely goes for it. John Cole, where did that come from? Brilliant stuff there. John Baker just about let a car's width open there, and John Cole says thank you very much and works his way up on through into 6th. Fantastic stuff there from the black and orange livery car. One of my favourite liveries of recent years is John Cole's one. Great to see it back out on track. Guy Swarbrick's up in 8th then as John Baker is back down in 7th now, but with some fantastic racing, so I don't think we can exclude him from anything just yet. Has a good run down start finish straight as it looks. And we continue on to the next lap. We're already nearly 5 minutes into this one, folks, and we've barely looked at the leaders because all the action, whether it be slightly chaotic or whether it be some real racing action, has been going on in the midfield. Knief, though, leads us with a comfortable lead, a much more comfortable lead than what we saw from him in race 1. He's slightly spread out from the likes of Whitehead and Daly in this one. Jack Hodson is your leading GTV at the moment, had a really strong start, kept the nose clean in all that chaos that I mentioned on lap 1, and is now potentially becoming under threat from the 4Cs, but will still be leading our GTV action, of course. So a really strong start in the reverse grid for Jack Hodson here. Daly's in P3 at the moment, and look at the pace delta between the 4C and the GT3 as you run through Savelli there. That's really impressive stuff from the platform of the 4C there. Obviously, the GTV more than makes up for it down the straights, which is why I really do like this combo of cars, but it just makes it some really interesting racing here. Mugello, you struggle to find a way on through some corners, so these 4Cs are not the overpowered, oh, it's so easy to just work on through as long you know how to drive it type situation. No, these drivers are going to have to work to find a way past these immense GTVs. Looks like Daly might have just done that now. He has done that and goes into 2nd on the road. Hodson runs along in P3 and is under threat now from Andrew Whitehead to go side by side with him. Through the Blondettis we go, and Hodson is able to defend it for the time being. It's his corner still. He's still got that car out in front quite comfortably. We run round that final corner. This is where the GTV really begins to shine, really begins to sing with that Busso V6 as we head on to the start-finish straight. He closes up ever so slightly on Daly, but Whitehead has a really strong run out of that final corner as well, it must be said. So we're in a slipstream train between these 3 cars as we run down towards the first corner once more. Hodson under pressure from Whitehead then. Meanwhile, slightly further behind it is Davis in P5, Cole in P6. So overall, so far, this race turning out a little bit better for him. It was chaotic at the start, as I say, but runs along in P6, had a fantastic overtake, as we saw a lap or so ago, and should be on for some decent points here in the reverse grid action. John Baker runs along in P7 as well. Again, some further points. Guy Swarbrick sets to make a few points here as well. Andy Craker has a few issues and retires from the race. Unfortunate to see that. Rob Whitney's on for some more points as well as he was in race 1, which again, a fantastic return to the action for Rob Whitney as Andy Webb runs along in P10. Then our last point scoring position, at least for the 4Cs, as I say. I'm sure we'll go back retrospectively. I might get co-pilot on it or something. Or I'm currently training my own local model here on my home network, so maybe I can make an AROC Racing Leagues AI, and maybe that can just kind of watch and sit in, see what's going on, and give us some facts, figures and statistics. That would be very interesting. I might do that after this race. There we go. It's going to involve some API trickery, I suspect. Those of you who are tech nerds like myself will know what I'm on about. The rest of you are off to sleep, and I don't blame you. But let's see if I can do that. That would be very interesting. Either way, we continue on. 18 minutes left to go. I'm liking the comments there from Wendy, who says, car 13, Miles Davis, leave John Baker alone. Well, I'm quite enjoying the battling, so I'm going to say, don't leave him alone. Let's have some more fighting action, because it's really good fun. As long as you're all playing fairly, drivers, it's really exciting stuff here. I think Mugello, a fantastic venue, albeit tricky in some places to get those overtakes done and slightly tight in some places. A fantastic venue to kick off our Giro D'Italia. Of course, we're after the most authentic Italian circuits for this season's action, and well, Mugello's arguably one of the best, isn't it, really? I mean, well, that might be slightly inflammatory because there's so many good ones in Italy, but Mugello's obviously up there, isn't it? Aviano, reminder folks, the next track we'll be visiting is Aviano, then it's Edepegusa, as I've now pronounced that correctly this evening, followed by Imola, Monza, Aldring Park, Vallelunga and Mugello is going to be the track roster for this season's action. That's in this 4-season GTV Championship. And then we have the Giulia GT4s next week as well. They'll be seeing the same tracks just on the opposing weeks, so we're going to be intermittent between the two championships, as we have been for the past few seasons as well. Hello to Greg Young, who's watching along, who says, certainly better regulation changes than Formula 1. Well, I'm going to say that and then leave that there because, well, I can't really improve upon what you said there, Greg, to be honest. Look at this, Greg, what you'll watch now. In fact, let's see if we can catch someone who's heading down the start-finish straight. Knief's going to be the next driver to do that, as Whitehead's had an issue. He might not be heading down the start-finish straight immediately. Let's hope he can get back on the way. He will, but he's going to be down in P6. This promotes Davis, Hodson and Cole up a position. Now Jack Hodson's on for a podium overall as Davis and Cole move up into the top 5. This is brilliant stuff for them, as we see John Baker is now fancying his chances on finding a way back past Andrew Whitehead, who's now apparently running a chrome liveried car, which is a change from race 1. So that's certainly something interesting. But let's just see. Yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go on board with Colin Knief, because what you're watching now, folks, is a race car heading down a long straight and not losing speed at the end of the long straight. It's still getting faster. It's really interesting things that some engines can do, which is work. And apparently Formula 1 haven't quite cottoned on to that, but when you just have a nice big petrol engine, you get to the end of the straight, it's still making power and still going quickly. It's a very nice feature. Maybe if you're watching along, FIA, take note. Here's how you do it. Either way, enough of the inflammatory stuff out the way. 15 minutes to go in this one. Andy Webb's running along in P9 as Nathan Mahoney's running along in P10. Great to see Nathan back in with a shout of things after race 1. Didn't really start his way. And Nathan's in with a shout of some points here this evening as it stands as well, which is fantastic stuff. You can see that GTV absolutely singing. Of course, this car, the predecessor to the car which he is registrar for, the GT, which succeeded this car in terms of the model lineup as well. So hopefully he's drawing some comparisons right now. He does, in fact, he used to have a fabulous red JTD equipped GT and has now swapped that out. I believe that car was called Bella. Apologies if I'm wrong, Nathan, but has now swapped that out for a Busso powered black GT, which I did briefly clap eyes on at the section registrar meeting last weekend. Looks like a lovely example once again, which I know is putting plenty of work into, but he has some front-wheel drive Busso-powered GT action in his life, and now he's getting to enjoy some the racing version of that as well, which is great to see. 40 minutes left to go on the clock then. Knief leads us ahead of Daly by 2.5 seconds. These two are going to be the drivers that battle it out overall in this one by the looks of things then. We still have just over half race distance to go. So let's look at their pace overall then, why don't we? Knief, last lap 149.9. These are about to update, by the way. Daly 149.7. We'll watch as that updates now. Knief's in the 150s on the last lap, whereas Matt Daly only gets faster to 149.5. That is actually Daly's best lap of the race so far. So Daly is slowly but surely reeling in Colin Knief out in front. This could get very interesting indeed, folks. We might be on for a bit of a battle here, quicker than what we saw in race 1 for P1, where it didn't happen to the last lap. Well, this could be happening earlier, folks, so do stay tuned for that one. Meanwhile, elsewhere, we're seeing Anthony Marengi and Guy Swarbrick having their own battle. Anthony, who had a fantastic showing in his debut race with us, unfortunately struggling a little bit more this time out, as Swarbrick, very sportsmanlike there, actually allows Anthony to unlap himself under no obligation to do so. We just ask drivers are kind and courteous to each other else on track, and the guy demonstrating that rather well there. So Anthony getting ahead of Swarbrick out on the road, but is still a couple of laps down. And I imagine is now treating this as a little bit of a practice run to get a bit more experience in the car and track as well, of course, ahead of when we're here in the Giulia next week as well. Looking back to that top end then, actually, my prediction might have been wrong. Daly hasn't quite been able to close up just yet, but is still running along very nicely. Hodson, meanwhile, runs along in P3. Doesn't have any major competition just yet, but Miles Davis isn't all that far behind. John Cole runs along in P5, then no major competition likewise, but Andrew Whitehead is hunting him down, it must be said at the moment, with a decent turn of pace. His car will have some damage on it with Andrew Whitehead, but he has just set his new fastest lap of the race so far. Now, that is still in the 1 minute 50s, which is not quite where we'd expect to see it. but we might see that improve as the fuel load does get lighter throughout this race. Interesting to see, actually. And this, again, if you're new to watching along with us in the AROC Racing Leagues, again, a big welcome to you. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for giving us some of your time to enjoy some racing action from us. But quite often, myself, Reeve Taylor, wrong. I'm just wrong about a lot of stuff. I'm just very wrong sometimes. And we've had our first one of the season, folks. I said I don't know whether the Softs is going to be able to do it in this evening's racing. One driver thought that in race one, only one. And that one driver was correct, because now we've got more drivers. Andy Webb is out on the softs in this race. Nathan Pony continues on the softs as well, and Geist Robert jumps onto the soft compound as well. So we do have a fantastic battle here that we've just caught up with between Miles Davis and Jack Cotton. This is for the lead of the GTV action, heading through the Luco left-hander there. They were side by side, but Miles Davis gets the car out in front in the end and now takes charge with his yellow GTV, leading us through towards the mid-sector of the lap. We get to listen to this car sing its way down the elevation drop to the lowest part of the circuit through the Arrabbiatas, and Davis, as I say, controls things quite nicely. Started this race, well, certainly better off than what he did in race one, that's a given, but wasn't looking clear-cut to be taking the lead of the GTVs in this one, but has certainly done so. And what we are seeing in the reverse grid actually is very interesting. A much bigger spread of 4C versus GTV. In the last race, it's pretty clear the 4C, once controlled and in a safe, comfortable environment, is the quicker car. But in a more action-packed race where there's more to think about and more to do, well, it's a little bit less clear-cut, isn't it, folks? The GTVs are certainly showing their merit in this one. Knief and Daly, don't get me wrong, leading very comfortably, P1 and P2 there, and a decent gap as well. But then the GT3's down, the DTV's down from P3 down to P5. Whitehead in the middle there, trying his best to put on a recovery here, but John Cole doing a very good defensive job, it must be said, heading through the Blondettis in just a moment. Is managing to keep Whitehead behind, and will probably continue to do so. Down the start-finish straight we go. He keeps a 4C behind. Then we have Baker and Whitehead who keep another 4C behind them, followed by Knight, Mahoney, Swarbrick and Merengue, who have managed to usurp Andy Krager in his 4C. So these two cars, very interesting to see them being able to fight each other so tooth and nail in this one. Two very different cars, and they've come together really well. What an enjoyable experience this is going to be this season, folks. But a fantastic bit of defensive driving from Cole there. Just positions his 4C correctly, knows that, sorry, positions his GTV correctly, knows that 4C is going to have the upper hand in terms of the cornering, in terms of the braking performance, but just gets to that first corner a little bit earlier, leaves it about as late as he can, and makes sure that there isn't a 4C sized gap for Andrew Whitehead to head down here. And we head through the narrow part of the straight. There's contact between the two. Whitehead, perhaps not quite expecting the 4C to break where it did, unfortunately just didn't stop in time and has cost himself a bit of time there as a result. Cole able to continue on. Luckily for him, balance not upset of the car. He was able to carry on there. Car stayed nice and planted. Runs along in fifth at the moment, and the challenge from Whitehead pretty much ends after that one. So this is going to make for some very interesting reading in our championship then, won't it? Now, there's not too much to read into in this one so far, given we've only completed one race, but why don't we take a look at the championship standings as they are from the first couple, from the first race rather. Now, that is what I would like to do, what I usually do, but I can't do because it hasn't updated for some reason. So as a result of that, then no point score for you so far then, folks. Apologies. I don't know. Write in your complaints to, well, you can head to our sim racing page if you'd like to do that. Please don't do that. It's be a shame. I mean, don't blame the sim racing section for my commentary mishaps. Please don't do that. There's going to be plenty of them this season, so do get prepared, folks. But we have 8 minutes to go in this one, and so far, Knief leads as well. We haven't had a real opportunity to look at the leaders for long at all in these races so far this evening, which is great news. It's a nice change, isn't it? I mean, the leaders do a fantastic job, and it's great to look at them. But when so much else is going on throughout the pack, it means we're getting great racing for everyone involved, which is what we like to see. As I say, we have just under 8 minutes to go in this one. What I am going to do, folks, is just in case you want to follow along with the timing that I follow along with, you can do that. You can see exactly what I see on the timing front in my virtual comms box. So if you'd like to see, you know, sector times, if you'd like to see overall track position, you can literally have a track indicator to see where those drivers are out on the circuit, you can follow along on the live timing page. That is aroc2.emperorservers.com/live-timing. And what I am doing now in the YouTube comments, in the broadcast chat, which, come on, more you need to get some interaction in there. What do you prefer, 4C versus GT3? I am putting a link that you can follow along with now. Click on that and you can see exactly what's going on in terms of timing. I'll have to get a little robot to do that. A little stream bot to do that for us, but for now, it's all manual. It's all manual here. Well, these cars aren't. They're flappy panel sequentials, obviously, but you get what I mean. Either way, Knief still leads us ahead of Matt and Daly. Let's see who else is looking close out on track. Well, at the moment, everyone just seems to have settled into a bit of a more comfortable zone for them to occupy out on track. This is something that we actually see quite frequently in the reverse grid races. All the action really does kind of explode off from the get-go, and then it slowly begins to taper off, whereas the race ones seem to be a bit more of a slow burn, where things are looking pretty settled after qualifying, everyone's in a pace order, and then all of a sudden it all converges towards the end of the race. You often see the opposite of that in the reverse grid stuff, but anything can happen, as we've seen at the end of race 1 this evening, as we have seen on many other occasions in the AROC Racing Leagues. Anything can and does happen. So with 6 minutes to go, nothing is settled yet, apart from the fact that we've had some great racing action and that these Busos sound brilliant. Let's go on board with John Baker in his fabulous looking 80s McLaren inspired liveried car, as it makes some gorgeous Buso noises around Mugello. Does it get more Italian and better than that? I don't think it does. Just under 5 minutes left to go in this one then. As we have a bit of a battle brewing, don't we, folks? There we can see John Cole versus Andrew Whitehead. The fight is back on. Last time, this didn't go very well indeed for Andrew Whitehead. We head into that final corner, and that's a brave move from Andrew Whitehead, but the gap was there. He saw a gap and went for it. There was a slight bit of trading paint, but I don't think John Cole's going to have much of an issue with that one, to be honest, because that was just a fantastic opportunistic move from Andrew Whitehead there. And John Cole's going to get a real opportunity to fight it back now, because he has the upper hand in terms of the straight line performance. Gets a nose out in front as we head into that first corner. He does have the outside line, though. This would be really impressive if he's able to hang on to that. There's big contact between the two there. They aren't upset, most importantly, though. They've lost some time. Cole, in fact, had dropped back a little bit, but no harm, no foul overall. They both continue on. My, oh my, that was a very brisk, a very impressive couple of corners there from both drivers, it must be said. 3.5 minutes left to go. Guys, Rubik's having a few technical issues by the looks of things. Hopefully he can get those resolved. He won't be scoring decent points as a result of that, which is a shame, because this race was looking quite good for him and he had some decent pace. But 3.5 minutes left to go on the clock. Whitehead eventually finds a way on through, but I am really enjoying this kind of GTV versus 4C dynamic. If you haven't figured out already, I hope the drivers are enjoying it as much as I am. With not long to go in this one at all, of course. Next time out, so in a week's time, exact same time, folks, so keep that in your diaries. There'll be further posts going out on all the AROC social media. I might not spam the meter register with it once again. Hopefully anyone who has tuned in from the meter register has gone, wow, that's good, I'll just keep watching that anyway. As I say, there will be more Mito sim racing action coming up later on, but if you, I'm sure you've already got this in the diaries if you do need to, but yeah, get it in your diaries, folks, because next week it will be the same course. Oh dear, as we look to have a bit of an issue. I think this is on my end, potentially. That is on my end, I believe, as we look to be back now. So hopefully you're still with me, folks, as it looks to be a couple of internet issues on my end. This has not happened. This has not happened for a very long time. In fact, my internet is the one good thing I can say about my technology setup is the internet is 2 gig down and quite a lot up and some very good network cards. So it shouldn't cause us issues. Hopefully, folks, this doesn't persist. We haven't had any technical or internet issues, at least from my end, for years, literally. What a shame it will be if on the debut of our new era, it all goes wrong. It all goes a bit Pete Tong, but we have 2 minutes left on the clock, and police report John Cole's had no issue with continuing up with the action. Those of you who saw how the last season ended in terms of the server probably had a bit of PTSD there. I know I just did, but we are back racing once again. It was a local fault with myself. Don't adjust your sets, folks. It's all on my end. Don't worry about it. Stay tuned to this one, and we will get to see the end of this race. But we're on board with John Cole, mainly because he's in a GTV, as John Baker is just behind him. It's now potentially for P6. Let's see if we will be on for a potential battle. No, it looks to be that, well, on that last lap there, potentially Cole was a little bit slower. Let's see if he can continue on. I'm just going to try to relieve these connection issues if I can. Apologies that we've had a few. Hopefully that's just improved things. I've just shut down a server on my network. So that's a long story, don't worry about it. So hopefully the connection does improve ever so slightly. Now we have just a minute left to go, and I'm going to say a battle of the Johns potentially on the cards. But things seem to have settled now. Meanwhile, Nathan Mahoney's fighting out against Steve Knight. Steve Knight, a veteran of the series, plenty of experience under his belt. Nathan Mahoney, a newcomer, but a hungry newcomer with plenty of sim racing experience in general behind him as well. So I am sure we're going to be on for a great battle between these two. Right now, it's the car in green that does win out with just 30 seconds left on the clock. But Steve Knight might just have a trick up his sleeve or two, potentially, from his experience running here in the past in the AROC Racing Leagues. See if he can find a way on through. 20 seconds left on our clock then. Knief extends his lead out in the front in the meantime, and we do see a decent delta between Matt Daly and Miles Davis. Miles Davis 22 seconds off the lead overall, but obviously is quite comfortably leading our GTV action, and then it's Hodson running along in P2. We saw a great overtaking action from those before to determine the GTV lead, with Miles Davis with that opportunistic race overtake before. We've looked at John Cole over the past few laps as well. We thought maybe Baker was getting a little bit closer, but hasn't been able to do so just yet. But anything can happen on the final lap. We've certainly seen that. And speaking of the final lap, we are now on the final lap of this race. Colin Knief is navigating around the Blondettis at the moment, so we might stay on board with him as he brings it home after what has been a action-packed weekend here at Mugello. What a way to kick off a new era for the AROC Racing Leagues. I know I'm certainly pleased with how things have gone and looking forward to some more. I hope you guys have as well, and I'm sure that Colin Knief is as well, because it has been two very comfortable race runs for him. Race 1 didn't work out, but race 2 certainly will. A podium in race 1 followed by a victory in race 2. It's Colin Knief who takes the top step in the end. A few seconds behind, it's going to be Matt Daly who completes the P2 spot there. That yellow liveried car once again featuring on the podium. A really impressive run then for those two drivers who start off their season well. But Miles Davis, young driver of course, and lead GTV, heads down start finish straight and takes the GTV race victory and rounds out the podium overall there, does Miles Davis. So really impressive running there. Jack Hodson not too far behind in P4, in the end being hunted down by Andrew Whitehead to complete your top 5 overall. John Cole will finish in the top 5 in the GTV running, but only by the skin of his teeth by the looks of it, because John Baker's putting up an almighty fight. Another lap more, and I think we're in for a real treat, folks. But it's going to be John Cole who completes the top 5 of the GTVs. It's P6 overall, followed by John Baker in P7. That it is a nice run. Again, another lap, folks. I think we're in for a real treat. Rob Whitney scores some more points on his return to the AROC Racing Leagues. A fantastic way to kick off his season there. As we see, Andy Webb is going to come home in P9 and overall. Nathan Mahoney, points on debut in the end. We have to wait a little bit longer for him to complete the running here, but should be on for a really good finish. What a way to kick off his AROC Racing Leagues career. Heads down that start, finish straight, and will get his maiden points on the board in his green GTV. Flashes the headlights in celebration. A well-deserved celebration there as well. Hopefully see plenty more from you this season, Nathan. As I say, you kick off your season in good form there with some points on the board. Steve Knight brings it home in 11th overall then, and then we have Are finishers who are a few laps down. Anthony Merengue unfortunately retiring early from this one, and Guy Strawbrick will be a few laps down but has at least completed to learn a bit more about the car and get ready for Mugello in a week's time in the Giulia. But there we go then, folks. That is the racing done then this evening. Matt Daly is usually the one to give us a bit of a stylish flourish for a finish there, and does so with some impressive drifts in this mid-engine car. It must be said, it's not easy to drift this type of car, and Matt Daly is able to do so there. But that is it from me this evening. I hope you very much enjoyed the kickoff to this season. That's a really impressive drift, top notch there, Matt Daly. But what a way to start the season. I hope you've enjoyed watching as much as I've enjoyed commentating, folks. Don't go anywhere, because this time next week we'll be back here with the Giulias before we head to Aviano in a 490 time in the 4-season GT3. So thank you very much for watching this evening, and a good night.